Some said Tony Spilotro was a home-loving husband and dedicated father.
The image of Tony being polite, caring, family man, benevolent, that's bullshit.
Tony Spilotro was, in fact, suspected by the FBI of over 20 murders.
Tony Spilotro was a cold-blooded killer.
As Las Vegas enforcer for the Chicago Mafia, Spilotro hit whoever his bosses wanted taken care of. Anyone, anytime, any place.
I believe Tony was mental. He was animalistic.
He hung a man on a meat hook.
I think he got pleasure out of harming people.
For years, the authorities tried to lock him up, but he bought policemen, owned judges, and shot witnesses. He got away with murder for over 20 years.
To find that Tony Spilotro was going to be released back onto the street was devastating.
This is the story of the grim career of this notorious mafia hitman, and how it was ended, not by his enemies, but by his friends. Spilotro made inquiries of a childhood friend, minor mobster Frank Carlotta. Carlotta revealed that he'd supplied the guns for the unauthorized killing, but said he wasn't at the scene. After Spilotro tracked McCarthy down, he wanted to ask him a question. Did he have an accomplice? McCarthy wouldn't talk. Then Spilotro tortured him with an ice pick. Still no name. Next, Spilotro put McCarthy's head in a vice. He tightened it. The pressure forced one of McCarthy's eyeballs out of its socket. Only then did Billy McCarthy name Jimmy Miraglia. It seemed Spilotro had got away with it. Little did he think that his old friend Frank Carlotta would one day bring him down. The Chicago bosses decided that Spilotro, with his tough guy reputation, was just what they needed to protect the skim.
He sort of went at it as though he were running a dive in Chicago, with the blackjacks and the guns and all that sort of thing, and physical violence.
The mob also feared that staff might blab about what they saw in the counting room. But Tony Spilotro's murderous reputation guaranteed their silence.
If there was a hit that needed to be done, it was Tony's responsibility at the direction of those people back in Chicago.
The Chicago enforcer made himself at home in Las Vegas. And the neon-lit desert paradise was just perfect for a street hustler like Tony Spilotro. But just as his new career as a Las Vegas street boss was getting going, the FBI got a chance to stop him in his tracks. In April 1973, Spilotro found himself back in Chicago under investigation for murder. So first, Spilotro killed a co-defendant he thought might damage his defense. Someone he'd known for 15 years.
Regarding friendship in the outfit, can only go so far, and
one has to follow orders if one's given orders to kill a friend. Friendship would have nothing to do with it in the long run. These aren't nice people.
But when on May the 30th, 1973, the murder trial began, another old friend, Chucky Grimaldi, gave evidence against him. The prosecuting attorney, James R. Meltrigger, clearly remembers Spilotro.
Spilotro's demeanor in the courtroom was very businesslike, professional, didn't show emotion, very well dressed, and presented a quiet image if you didn't know better.
Even when Grimaldi's eyewitness testimony shocked the jurors, Spilotro was unmoved.
When Chucky testified, his testimony involved grisly details. He was shot, he was stabbed, he was kicked and beaten, he was threatened with castration, pieces of his flesh were cut off. There was no sense of looking away, or remorse, ghastliness at what was being said about a crime that Spilotro, was alleged to be involved in. No emotion at all.
Grimaldi's detailed testimony clearly condemned Spilotro. But then, Spilotro turned the tables on the prosecutor and the FBI. He told them something their informant had not. He had, he said, an alibi. The defense even produced a dated receipt to show to the jury. It seemed the Chicago outfit had protected their man in Vegas as only they knew how.
We could not break the alibi. We couldn't show it was recently fabricated.
The jury found Tony Spilotro not guilty.
I was relatively surprised, crushed actually. That kept the image, so to speak, that some of these individuals were untouchable. That was exasperating to a prosecutor.
Tony Spilotro was a free man. Free to go back to his life in Las Vegas. By 1976, Tony Spilotro was expanding his operation and opened a new jewelry store, the Gold Rush. He made it the center of his loan sharking, bookmaking, and jewelry fencing operations. To help him expand even more, he later called in his old childhood friend from Chicago, who had helped with the M&M murders, Frank Carlotta. Carlotta's job was to recruit experienced, skilled thieves from cities around the US and establish a first-class burglary crew. They made a real impact. Known as the Hole-in-the-Wall Gang, they left their signature all over town. Spilotro was able to run his outfit with little risk of prosecution. His chief ally was fear. When the police or the FBI did get involved, they found a strange shortage of witnesses.
When someone comes by your house and says, we know where your children go to school, we know what your children do, either you cooperate with us or something could happen to your kids.
Corruption was woven into the very fabric of Sin City, and this made stopping Spilotro an impossible task. Spilotro now applied the mob rule. Rats must be exterminated. He made sure he got the hit on listener authorized by Chicago and told Frank Carlotta to take care of it. This most unprofessional of hits seemed to meet its aim, keeping Spilotro and Carlotta out of court and out of jail. But it was only a reprieve. This night's work would eventually be part of Tony Spilotro's undoing. After police shot dead an associate, Spilotro rashly issued a contract to kill the 2 Metro police officers involved. Tony Spilotro was now in deep trouble. Not only had he failed to ask permission for a hit, but unforgivably, he put his boss's wives and children in mortal danger. To a beleaguered Tony Spilotro, the police were now a real threat, and the Las Vegas FBI was about to get tough too.
We knew we had Tony Spilotro. It was just a matter of time.
But under new anti-organized crime laws, if they could connect Spilotro in any way to the burglary, he would face trial with his crew.
We knew that they worked for Tony. So absolutely it was significant at the time, tremendously significant. And it drew him right in to a major crime.
During debriefing, Carlotta reached back 20 years into his past. He revealed it was Tony Spilotro who had committed the unsolved M&M murders. Spilotro was arrested in Las Vegas. In Chicago, on the 24th of October 1983, Spilotro went on trial for the double murder of Billy McCarthy and Jimmy Miraglia, 21 years earlier. Now, the FBI seemed to have Spilotro on the ropes at last. But the corrupting power of the Chicago outfit still reached into dark corners and high places. Some judges were rumored to remain tied to the mob, and Spilotro certainly seemed to think so. He persuaded his lawyer to agree to a tactic almost unheard of in a murder case. He waived his right to trial by jury. Judge Thomas J. Maloney alone would judge Spilotro. Maloney decided not to accept Carlotta's statements as reliable evidence. And so, he acquitted Spilotro. Spilotro faced sentences that could total 85 years in prison. This prospect put him under enormous pressure, and the mob knew that people under pressure can crack.
He was an embarrassment. He was a loose cannon. All doubts have to be resolved in favor of the mob. It's possible he could say something that would hurt somebody.
He and his brother Michael met up with people they knew and trusted. Associates, friends even. The brothers were taken to Bensonville, outside Chicago, believing that Michael was to be inducted as a made man into the outfit. But as soon as Spilotro entered the basement, he realized what was about to happen. He asked if he might say a prayer. Tony Spilotro had beaten and tortured many victims in his career. Now, he was forced to watch as his younger brother was struck again and again. Michael was beaten to death in front of him, and Tony Spilotro knew that he was next.